Hello, everybody. How's it going? Fantastic to be here in Frankfurt. Yeah. Yeah, gotta watch the lines. At Vestre we say everyone can save the world a little. So even though I'm the head of sustainability here, we believe that everyone has to do their part, and it's really all about when you're trying to eat an elephant. How do you do it? You have to slice it into very small pieces, and I'm not suggesting that anyone should eat elephants here, but yeah, that's kind of the way we look at sustainability too. You really have to break down some of these fairly complex problems to the smaller bits, and start tackling them one day at a time. What you see here is Tellus, the world's first bench in fossil-free steel from SSAB. It's going to be launched this year, and very, very excited about that. So keep a lookout for that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. And that's also symbolizing kind of the motto that everyone can save the world a little, because we're actually quite a small player compared to some of the other partners of SSAB. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So this chart shows the company's growth since 2015. I started in 2016. Not saying there's a direct correlation here, but it's been an exciting period, and but I'm not showing it to brag. I'm also showing it because this number here, 82%, is now how much we export. So we're a company based out of Norway. Our home markets are Norway and Sweden. We produce street furniture for mostly to public sector, but also increasingly to private sector. And over the past few years, we have been expecting Sweden to overtake Norway, and last year it did, but the US also became actually our biggest market last year. And this is important in the context of sustainability because of two things. One is that we have to view the trade-off between growth and sustainability. And the second one is that there's a geographical layer that also increases complexity greatly when it comes to moving products of substantial weight across great distances. So this is our current sort of map of where we have operations. I'll tell you a little bit more about the production operations later, but they're situated here in Norway and Sweden, right on the border, and our headquarters in Norway. We have also operations in Sweden, Germany. We have an office in Berlin, and representatives also in Düsseldorf and across the country, basically, and the UK. But as I mentioned, also the US is now our biggest market, which also creates some different challenges when it comes to the quality that you need to deliver, and also the need to get it right the first time. Also, when it comes to when you're looking at taking stuff back and so on and so forth, it's of course a completely different thing when you're moving it across great distances. We also have 3 core values that we have been working after since 1947. It's design, quality, and sustainability. First and foremost, we believe that design should be something that everyone can enjoy. out in the public spaces. It shouldn't be restricted to private spaces that are locked away. Great design should also be out in our cityscape, and it can be enjoyed by everyone. And to be able to create a design that can be enjoyed by everyone, it needs to have a very high quality as well. It needs to be both durable but also functional. So design and quality are very tightly linked together. The third value of sustainability is also, we believe, very tightly linked to quality, because if you have a product that maybe has a lot lower emissions when it comes from the factory, it might last just a fraction of the time of something of quality that had a higher emissions. So you actually always need to take into account the time aspect when you're looking at sustainability. So for our products, which contain quite a lot of steel, quite a lot of metal, they might not be the lowest emissions when they leave the factory. But if you take the time axis into account, you can actually see that over the lifetime, they are the most sustainable. So I like to say that our products they have sustainability potential, but they're not like no product is sustainable right off the factory line. And to be able to actually do a lot of the things we do. Last year we had, as I mentioned, the US overtook as the biggest market, and we had one huge order in particular that made that happen. And to be able to deliver on the time and the magnitude that we received in that order, we need to have a culture that really just takes up any challenge and dares to actually move forward with it. And what we did when we assembled that order, as you can see here, we sent over some of our people. On the left here, you see Jørgen, one of our head of assembly. He's been with us for more than 15 years. And then on the right, you have Vestre, who is also the chairman of the board. And that sort of shows also to the Americans in particular, this was kind of like jaw-dropping, because that shows how a flat structure actually works from the Nordics. And they really, really appreciate that kind of follow through and grit also in the US. We actually have a goal of becoming the world's most sustainable furniture company by 2030, and it's quite a hairy goal. It's becoming more challenging every year, of course, but we do believe that we have a three-pronged plan which will hopefully take us there. The first part of the plan is to decarbonize rapidly. The second part of the plan is to scale circular models. And the third part of the plan is to take ownership of the social sphere. So to begin with the last one, we say that we deliver social meeting places. We don't deliver products. We don't deliver benches, tables, and whatnot. We actually create the social meeting places where people can come together regardless of their background, cultural, economic, social, and so on. But we don't really know today that much about what happens after the products leave the factory. We say that we create great social meeting places, but can we prove that? Maybe in the future, right? If we're looking at a timeline, we already have a fairly detailed decarbonization plan. I will tell you a little bit more about that. It's largely based on two pillars. The first pillar would be to switch out materials for low carbon alternatives, and also switch out, for instance, for zero emission transport and this kind of more technological aspects. And the second one is to scale circular models. So the decarbonization plan also ties into the second of the overall strategy. And this is actually what we're working on now. I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but trying to really set out the roadmap towards 2030. How can we turn this linear business that we have today into a circular one? And we had some great examples here earlier as well. And yeah, to be honest, it's very nascent for us, like many manufacturing businesses. How do we get towards increasing that revenue without increasing the resource intensity? So it's all about decoupling economic growth from resources. And then the third one, once we have a fairly good grip of the two first, we really start to dig into the third one. And I think, to be honest, a lot of companies are going to succeed in the first two, in decarbonization, in scaling circular models. But the third one is probably what's going to really set us apart and hopefully allow us to achieve that goal by 2030. Just to dig in a little to some of the KPIs that we're currently tracking on various aspects of the business, just to see how we're doing on some of the material aspects, product aspects, and so on. We start here with the share of FSC certified wood. So for wood, it's of course something that's becoming increasingly important, and also with the EUDR, some new regulations are coming, and we know that there's still a lot of illegal logging going on, so we need to have FSC certification. But we also know that this is quite an administrative burden for a company. So we are also really eager to see how we can utilize technology to get from a very administrative certification process to more of a streamlined process where you can utilize technology to see where materials came from. When it comes to products, we are working with ISO 14024, it should say, Type 1 eco-label. You're probably familiar with the EU eco-label or Blaue Engel, this kind of eco-labels. It's very established for consumer products, but it's also a way for both us as a producer, but also for the purchaser to know, to separate what's a good from a less good product when it comes to procurement, because we see that there is a jungle of various eco-labels out there. So we need to also work with governments and work with various players in the industry to try to streamline that, because we're really trying to achieve the same goal, which is to make better choices on our purchasing. But it can be hard when you have to relate to so many different eco-labels. And then we have, on our metal, we have the share of post-consumer content in the steel. It's actually really low. The reason for that is that we currently offer the best guarantees in the business for lifetime warranty against rust and 15-year on powder coating. And when we are galvanizing the steel and then powder coating on top of it, you need to have a very specific alloy to be able to do that. Of course, we aim to get way above 10% by 2030, but that's where it's at today. When it comes to aluminium, it's a little bit of a different story. You don't galvanize, hot dip galvanized aluminium, you only powder coat straight on it. So there we are almost up at 70% already and aiming for more. Mostly due to Hydro's, the Norwegian aluminium giants, Circal products, which have 75% and more post-consumer content. And then we have the final one. As we need more green energy, we don't want to only lay claim to some of the green energy with guarantees of origin. We want to actually be part of enabling more total green energy on the grid. So as you can see, we have a downward trajectory. We have some solar panels on our roof. It doesn't cut it when it comes to us wanting to be a net positive provider on energy. So we are signing power purchase agreements with new energy being deployed to be able to achieve that target. But yeah, let's dive a little bit into the carbon account here. So it's been mentioned by many here already, but we really see that in our case, 98% of emissions are actually in scope 3. So this really gives us an indication of where to focus. When it comes to materials, that's 85% of our emissions. And when it comes to steel, the single biggest source, it's 67. It's usually between 65 and 70% of our emissions. So it's a huge category, right? So this really is a good way of trying to figure out where we should prioritize the limited resources we have in terms of decarbonization. And it also tells us something else. It tells us that we need to work with the value chain. 3 years in a row now, we have invited to something called a Climate Action Day. It's a fancy word for a supplier day. But we have invited all our key suppliers to really try to involve them in our climate strategies in our strategies towards goals and see if they are on board for the ride or if they even want to contribute to it. And maybe we can actually start going beyond competing as a single company and start competing as a value chain, because what we see quickly when we get into both materials but also CO2 emissions is that we cannot do much alone. If we only address scope 1 and 2, we address 2%. There's no point in really doing that. So we need to go beyond a single company, start involving in our climate strategies. And also, it was mentioned there earlier that head of sustainability or like sustainability manager can be kind of a solitary operation. It's extremely important, as it was mentioned in some of the discussions, to involve the team. We need to involve those on sourcing and those on the shop floor and everyone in the company to understand how they are playing a role in the bigger picture. This is extremely important. And also to, especially for the sourcing team, to understand how we can put in environmental aspects, social aspects into the contracts to hold our suppliers to the same standards. That's how we can actually make change in the value chain. And it's also working. So I have a couple of examples here. The first one is our hot dip galvanizer, DuoSync. On the first Climate Action Day that we held, the CEO there, he came with a certificate showing that they were the first galvanizer that can purchase low carbon zinc from Boliden, effectively reducing that input factor by 60%. It's not a huge input factor, but that did something for our carbon account. It also did something for their competitiveness. Now they suddenly got customers from other parts wanting this low carbon zinc. Second one, Jan Olav Olsen, it's quite a small transport provider in a regional one in Norway. But they, last year, together with us, switched to HVO diesel on all of the internal transport for us, effectively reducing that input factor by an order of magnitude. The last one I have to mention also, SSAB and Tibnor. I mentioned it in the beginning, the first bench in fossil-free steel. But it's actually kind of an interesting story, because our CEO back in 2018, he knocked on their door trying to place the first order for fossil-free steel, because they had announced a hybrid technology. But they wanted to sign with a couple of small or medium-sized companies like Volvo, Mercedes, and this kind of thing first. But in the end, actually, we also became a partner on the fossil-free steel. Quite a small company from Norway, showing that if you have those kind of strategies and those kind of, I'd say, ambitions in sustainability, you can actually do something even if you are quite a small player. There's a picture from the galvanizing plant. Very old technology. But yeah, very industrial. I want to show you two slides from the decarbonization plan. We have to look at carbon intensity. How much do we emit per unit of revenue when we're growing as a company? Of course, we also have to look at total emissions. So even though it went up quite a lot last year, it actually relatively went a little bit down. And we see that we still believe in this plan because we see that there's so much happening in the second half of this decade, right? We have the fossil-free steel coming commercially available in 2026, and a lot of other technologies on steel too. We have electric transport. We see now zero-emission transport is being switched out. Even on long haul, there's coming alternatives that are going to be very rapidly replaced once they reach cost parity for fleet operators. We see also on the circular aspect, taking back, reusing, extending lifetime. We see continuous improvement. We work with lean. We work with one-piece flow and continuously improving, reducing waste internally. After a few years, we believe we will see alternatives material-wise for almost every product, every input material. And then finally, we aim to be 10% circular by 2030. It doesn't seem like a high number, but taking into account that we also aim to grow quite a lot, that's going to be challenging. And we also want to report on how we help or how we make investments in the value chain, called value chain interventions, to reduce emissions directly instead of relying on offsets or removals. Because what we see is that more and more of those sectors that were deemed hard to abate actually are possible to do something about. Here's some examples. You can read more in the report. Another interesting switch from an annual reporting structure to a monthly reporting structure. I don't think anyone would hire a CFO who only wanted to report once a year. It's going to be the same with carbon. We need to track it monthly. We need to make it top of mind also for suppliers. Also for the board and management team and so on. They need to have it top of mind. It's not yet at the stage where CO2 equivalents for various products or sort of the intuitive sustainability of one material versus another is not top of mind for most people today. It's coming. For our company to operate in this way, we really try to have a red thread through everything. So we have design also in the production facilities. Snøhetta created our first facility in Torsby. And then we had Bjarke Ingels Group do the second one in 2022. This is in Kongsvinger in Norway. If you're ever in Norway, I extend an invite to you. Reach out and you can come and check it out, because it's actually quite interesting how we are going from looking at industry as dirty, sealed, hostile to actually looking at this like industry can be inviting, it can be transparent, and it can be something that is a social meeting place in itself. Here's the render, and here's the real factory. So actually, the architect said that this was probably the closest to render they had ever made something, for better or worse. I mean, let's be honest, but it's still very, very efficient. So in this way, we are trying to make this factory into a social meeting place in itself, bringing customers, bringing suppliers, bringing everybody in, and also maintaining that transparency for our workers who are hopefully really enjoying working there compared to a very closed-off factory. But this is all happening, or most of it's happening upstream. So we have a fairly strong control over upstream. And we're currently, as I mentioned, working with Circle Economy, a Dutch company, looking at the material streams. Because I think in the future, we're going to look at financial streams, carbon streams, but also material streams are going to be some of the things that you track as a company. How much is going in, how much is going out as products, and how much is residual waste is coming out. We see that increasingly customers are also caring about carbon. We can start to compare, for instance, this fossil bench with fossil-free steel versus a comparable bench to show very easily how much we are doing with just changing one input factor. But we also see when we are trying to get into circularity, we need to go downstream as well, because we need to be in touch with the end customers. What if someone purchased a bench 20 years ago and they don't know, they no longer work there? How are they going to understand how to repair the bench or how to purchase more if they needed? They cannot reach out to us. We have been doing some pilots with product passports together with Hydro, just trying to experiment a little. We don't know exactly how it's going to end up. But something that might be interesting is, where did the materials come from? What about the second life? What about the third life? Our goal is actually that the willingness to pay for something used, something that has a story, should actually be higher than something new, given that you're given the same guarantees and the same quality from a supplier. We're trying to roll this out on more products, starting with the Circal aluminum, and it's probably not going to be in this iteration forever, but there is a lot of interesting stories you can put into a digital passport. This is also still one way. Ideally, we'd like to also be able to talk to the end customer, the end user, get input. We have a vision zero that all the products should have the potential to live forever. To be able to achieve that, of course, we need to talk to the end customer and to the end user. We also see the potential for this kind of maintenance and life extension programs that can be a win-win for us. It can be a win-win for the customer, but also for people who for some reason have fallen outside of the workforce. Maybe they can get a real job and start getting back into work through these kinds of programs, like the maintenance team that we have here in Oslo. We also see the need. We have done some pilots with taking back products, refurbishing them, remanufacturing them with paint and so on. It creates a lot of friction in the production facilities. So we see the need to have something of a space where these things can be fixed, cleaned up and so on before they go into the production, because the production is built for one-piece flow and for something that's manufactured. So we need to accommodate that as well. As I mentioned earlier, we need to, as companies and also as purchasers, standardize on certifications. It should be equivalent, not trying to lock in with one certification. One proposal that we have is to have the Type 1 eco-label combined with an EPD. So then you know it's a good product, and then you can differentiate based on the EPD values, third-party verified. Trying to get carbon footprint values top of mind for more purchasers. We see already there's some projects that are asking for it. This is from a university in Norway. They even asked for A4 data, which is the data from the factory transport to the site, which can be done specifically, of course. So we see that just like the material overview, we need to have both the top-down view of the company, but also the bottom-up view. How many products did we sell in that year? And what's the residual? What's the waste? Because in the end, there is no waste in nature. So we go from sustainability strategy to strategy. Thanks.